History remembers how they lived, how they ruled, how they shook empires, and how they rewrote history. But when it comes to their deaths, specifically where they were buried, the trail goes dark. Some tombs were simply lost to time, others were hidden on purpose, and a few may never have existed at all. Yet we keep searching, across oceans, under cities, beneath desert sand, through forests, and over mountainous terrain. Because what's buried is never just bone or dust. It's legacy, power, and myth. We look for the burial place of Alexander the Great, a king whose golden sarcophagus disappeared, possibly still beneath the streets of modern-day Alexandria. Next, we search for the grave of Mozart, the musical genius whose simple grave was seemingly erased. We chase the burial site of Attila the Hun, the warlord sealed beneath a river, buried with iron and blood. We hunt for the lost tomb of Cleopatra, Egypt's last queen, who might lie submerged under the sea or beneath a ruined temple. Lastly, we follow clues about the whereabouts of Genghis Khan, the emperor who erased his own grave from the earth, leaving behind a mighty empire, but no epitaph. These are the tombs we cannot find. Not because we haven't looked, but because it's possible some were never meant to be found. Somewhere beneath the noise and architecture of modern Alexandria, under crumbling foundations and layers of forgotten stone, lies the missing tomb of one of history's most unstoppable forces, Alexander the Great. Alexander the Great died in Babylon in 323 BC, at just 32 years old, while he was in the middle of planning the next chapter of his never-ending conquest. After his death, his generals debated about what to do with his body, because his corpse wasn't just a corpse, it was a symbol of power, a divine artifact. Whoever buried Alexander controlled the legend. So Ptolemy, one of his most ruthless lieutenants, hijacked the funeral procession and brought the king's body to Egypt. First to Memphis, then years later to Alexandria, the gleaming city Alexander himself had founded on the Mediterranean coast. There, in a golden sarcophagus supposedly filled with honey and sealed in glass, he was laid to rest in a mausoleum known as the Soma, a word in ancient Greek meaning body. For centuries, Alexander's tomb was a shrine. Roman emperors visited it like a rite of passage. Julius Caesar was said to have wept there. Augustus offered flowers, and Caligula stole the conqueror's armor. The tomb was revered as a place of power, prophecy, and imperial blessing. Then, it vanished. War, earthquakes, tsunamis, the silting of the Nile, the Christian purge of pagan relics, 1,000 years of chaos and construction buried the royal quarter under a city that never stopped expanding. By the time the Middle Ages arrived, Alexander's tomb was no longer a memory. It was a mystery. Today, archaeologists believe the Soma may lie beneath central Alexandria. But there have been no bones found, no sarcophagus, no golden relics. More than 140 searches have tried and failed to locate the tomb. Each expedition ends in dust, rubble, and disappointment. So the quest for the tomb of Alexander the Great continues. Because this isn't just a hunt for the remains of a historic figure. It's a chase after immortality. The final resting place of the man who tried to conquer the world, and a tomb that may still hold answers to unanswered questions. Not every lost tomb belongs to an emperor or conqueror. Some are simply stolen by time, lost not in deserts or catacombs, but in plain sight. When Wolfgang Amadeus Mozart died in Vienna in 1791 at just 35 years old, the world lost a firework of sound and spirit. The man who had redefined music was buried in a common grave at St. Mark's Cemetery. There was no parade, no marble headstone, no monuments in his name. But this wasn't a pauper's fate. Under Emperor Joseph II's reforms, all burials were standard, efficient, humble, and temporary. Mozart's modest coffin was lowered into a shared, unmarked plot with several others. Within a decade, the grave was emptied to make room for the next round of the dead. Even Mozart's widow, Constanze, tried and failed to find the exact spot of his tomb just 17 years later. She had no coordinates to work with, just memories that were already fading. Then came the skull. A gravedigger claimed he'd taken the cranium from Mozart's grave before it was cleared. That skull passed from hand to hand, eventually landing at the Mozarteum Foundation in Salzburg. And it's still there, a weird, creepy relic, fragile and brown. But DNA testing remains inconclusive. The truth is, no one knows if it's really his. In 1855, a stone angel and a broken column were placed at what was guessed to be the location of Mozart's grave, and it still stands there today. But it's only a monument, not a tomb. Mozart's music is still relevant today, played in cathedrals, movie theaters, even video games. But his grave is gone. No sarcophagus, no shrine. The final note of his life remains unheard. In the twilight of the Roman Empire, one man became its waking nightmare. Attila the Hun, the so-called scourge of God, led an empire on horseback and brought cities to their knees. Then, just as suddenly as he rose to power, he died. No battlefield glory, no assassin's blade, just a nosebleed on his wedding night, according to the tale. The year was 453 AD. He had taken a young bride named Ildiko, and sometime during the night Attila was found dead. His warriors mourned him in the only way they knew, by slashing their faces, letting blood run in place of tears. Then, they took his body and buried him, in secret. Legend says his body was sealed in 3 nested coffins, one of gold, one of silver, one of iron, and placed in a grave dug in the bed of a diverted river. Once the tomb was sealed, the water was returned to its course, hiding it forever. The story goes that to protect the location, every man involved in the burial was executed. There could be no witnesses. For centuries, treasure hunters, scholars, and dreamers have scoured the plains of Hungary, Romania, and Serbia, tracking ancient riverbeds and chasing folktales. Some suspect he lies near the Tisza River, long altered by time and flood. Others believe his tomb has already been built over or washed away entirely. But no one has ever found a trace of remains. No bones, no iron tomb, no golden coffins. The tomb of Attila remains one of history's most perfectly hidden graves. Not lost by accident, but buried by design, intentionally. A man that seemingly came from nowhere and left nothing behind. And in death, as in life, Attila is nowhere and everywhere at the same time. A legend on horseback, galloping into the fog of the forgotten. She ruled with intellect, wielded language as a weapon, and seduced 2 empires. But in death, Cleopatra disappeared. No gilded sarcophagus, no eternal shrine, just a trail of fragments, half buried beneath centuries of sand and sea. After her death in 30 BC, alongside her lover Mark Antony, Cleopatra was granted a royal burial by her enemy, Octavian. Ancient sources say the couple was laid to rest in a lofty and beautiful tomb, likely near the temple of Isis. A final act of mercy, or control, depending how you look at it. But after their burial, it was nothing but silence. Over 2,000 years later, no one knows where Cleopatra's tomb is. No bones, no grave, no door leading to her underworld tomb. Some believe she lies beneath modern Alexandria, in the sunken ruins of her palace district, drowned by earthquakes and tidal shifts. Others have followed a trail to Taposiris Magna, a crumbling temple 30 miles west of Alexandria. There, Dominican archaeologist Kathleen Martinez has spent nearly 2 decades digging through collapsed tunnels and unmarked tombs. She's found gold-leafed tongues, coins bearing Cleopatra's image, even a sprawling underground passage that some call a geometric miracle. It's still unknown if this tunnel could finally lead to Cleopatra. Critics argue it's unlikely. Cleopatra was royalty, and Taposiris was a provincial shrine. But stranger things have happened. Cleopatra's lost tomb isn't just about bones, it's about legacy. She was the last pharaoh, the final chapter of ancient Egypt before Rome swallowed it whole. Finding her tomb would be like striking a match in a sealed chamber. It would throw new light on an empire's end. Until then, we keep looking, and the Queen of the Nile waits, wherever she may be. He conquered more land than any man in history. Cities fell, kingdoms vanished. His empire stretched from the Pacific to the Caspian Sea. But when Genghis Khan died in 1227, he disappeared completely, by design. No monument, no pyramid, no carved stone or sacred flame. The accounts are brutal and precise. After his death, likely from illness or injury, his body was carried back to Mongolia. Somewhere in the Khenti Mountains, near the sacred slopes of Burkhan Khaldun, he was buried in an unmarked grave. Then the earth swallowed him. To preserve the secret, the Mongols went to extremes. Rivers were diverted over the site. Thousands of horses stampeded the soil to erase the trail. Soldiers killed the gravediggers. Then those soldiers were killed. Legend says 1,000 people died to make Genghis Khan's tomb disappear. The site became a forbidden zone called Ik-Korig, the Great Taboo. For centuries, it was sealed off from the world. Only the royal elite and a warrior clan called the Darkhad could enter. Even during Soviet rule, access was banned. In recent decades, technology tried to break the curse. Archaeologists and explorers have scanned the area with drones, satellites, and ground-penetrating radar. Some claim they've found anomalies, possible burial mounds, strange formations, but nothing definitive. No excavation has ever confirmed the tomb. Mongolia treats the land as sacred. Digging is taboo. And so Genghis Khan remains the most successful disappearing act in human history. A man who reshaped the globe, then ensured no one could ever stand over his grave.
Thank you for joining us for another episode of Fireside Unsolved. If you haven't already, please like and subscribe to help the channel grow. Until next time, take it easy and be easy, you filthy bastards.